on this basis. We have now, September the 9th, 1993, a letter from Yasser Arafat to Prime Minister Rabin of Israel. The letter reads, Mr. Prime Minister, I would like to confirm the following PLO commitments. The PLO recognizes the right of the State of Israel to exist in peace and security, and the PLO accepts UN Security Council Resolutions 242 and 338. You see, the United States wasn't concerned that Yasser Arafat is a terrorist. They're not concerned about his actions and what he was doing. The only thing that they're concerned about is he agrees to UN Resolution 242 and 338, because that's affirming the New World Order system. That's affirming the authority of the United Nations. In view of the promise of a new era in the signing of the Declaration of Principles based on Palestinian acceptance of Security Council Resolutions 242 and 338, the PLO affirms that those articles of the Palestinian Covenant which deny Israel's right to exist. You see, is the United States going to be concerned about whether Yasser Arafat actually changed the Palestinian Covenant and says that Israel has a right to exist? No. All they care about is there's a piece of paper signed that says you will abide by UN Resolution 242 and 338, because they're looking after the interests of the New World Order and of the promoting the power of the United Nations. So there was a letter that was returned from Prime Minister Rabin to Yasser Arafat, also dated September the 9th, 1993, which says, in response to your letter, September the 9th, 1993, I wish to confirm to you that in light of the PLO commitment included in your letter, the government of Israel has decided to recognize the PLO as the representative of the Palestinian people and to commence negotiations with the PLO within the Middle East peace process. So this came and resulted in a Declaration of Principles of Interim Self-Government Arrangements, or are also known as Oslo I, September the 13th, 1993. And so it goes on to say that the government of the State of Israel and the PLO team representing the Palestinian people agree, and the two sides agree to the following principles: that the aim of the negotiations within the current Middle East peace process is, among other things, to establish a Palestinian interim self-government authority leading to a permanent settlement based on Security Council Resolutions 242 and 338. It is understood that the interim arrangements are an integral part of the whole peace process, and that the negotiations on a permanent status will lead to the implementation of Security Council Resolutions 242 and 338. It's understood that it will lead to the implementation of those Security Council resolutions. And so ultimately, Israel making this peace, they are in essence granting a PLO state in return to the 67 borders. But politically, it's been hard to do without revealing the hand of these world planners. And so they've let it drag out since 1993 and even back to 1979 to the present day, because they want to politically accomplish it. And so it looks like there was negotiations, and it be done in such a way that the people in Israel and the Jews in the United States won't rebel against it. That's why they haven't twisted the arms of Israel in an overt way and forced them to abide by these UN resolutions. But that day is at hand where the nations of the world is going to tell Israel, now you are going to create that PLO state. You are going to return to the 67 borders in accordance to UN Resolutions 242 and 338, which you've already signed and said that you would. Now do it. We had a peace treaty between Israel and Jordan, October the 26th, 1994, which reads, the government of the State of Israel and the government of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, bearing in mind the Washington Declaration signed by them the 25th of July, 1994, affirming at the achievement of a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace in the Middle East based upon Security Council Resolutions 242 and 338 in all its aspects. So this leads to UN Security Council Resolution 1397, which is passed on March the 12th, 2002. This resolution says the following: the Security Council, recalling all of its previous relevant resolutions, in particular UN Resolution 242 passed in 1967 and 338 1993, affirming a vision of a region where two states, Israel and Palestine, live side by side with secure and recognized border. A peace and security agreement based upon UN resolutions and the establishment of a PLO state. Now, if you've been following the news, you will see that the current Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert, is saying he's willing to negotiate with Mahmoud Abbas and the PLO regarding the Saudi peace initiative. And he's willing to negotiate and implement it and accept it. So let's look at the Saudi peace initiative of March the 28th, 2002. What we will see in the Saudi peace initiative, it wasn't their peace initiative. It was the initiative of the United States to advance the agenda of the United Nations, but it was given the name of the Saudis to make it look like theirs idea, but it's been what the United States has been promoting clear back to the Camp David Accords and the peace agreement that was made between Israel and Egypt. The Beirut Declaration on Saudi Peace Initiative, March the 28th, 2002. Following is an official translation of the full text of the Saudi-inspired peace plan adopted by an Arab summit in Beirut on Thursday. Having listened to the statement made by His Royal Highness, Prince Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz, Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in which His Highness presented his initiative calling for full Israeli withdrawal from all the Arab territories occupied since June of 1967 in implementation of Security Council Resolutions 242 and 338, reaffirmed by the Madrid Conference of 1991, called by President Bush the father, and the Land for Peace principle, peace and security, and Israel's acceptance of an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital in return for the establishment of normal relations in the context of a comprehensive peace with Israel. You see what has just been stated right there that I read? That is what the United States is seeking to achieve. That's what the Arabs has agreed to. So really, from the perspective of what the United States is seeking to achieve and to make sure the peace process is in accordance with UN resolutions and the acceptance of UN resolutions, it's the Arab world who's already accepted it. It's Israel that hasn't formally yet accepted it in seeking to implement it, even though they signed the paper and said that they do accept it. That's why pressure is being placed upon Israel. The Beirut Declaration goes on to say that there will be a full Israeli withdrawal from all the territories occupied since 1967, including the Syrian Golan Heights to the June 4, 67 lines, as well as the remaining occupied Lebanese territories in the south of Lebanon. Achievement of a just solution to the Palestinian refugee problem to be agreed upon in accordance with UN General Assembly Resolution 194, and the acceptance of an establishment of a sovereign independent Palestinian state on Palestinian territories occupied since June the 4th, 1967, in the West Bank and Gaza Strip with East Jerusalem as its capital. Then, in 2003, we have what is known as the roadmap. You see often President Bush is referring to the roadmap. Well, what does the roadmap say? It's a plan to implement UN Resolutions 242 and 338. The U.S. State Department on April the 30th of 2003 released the text of the roadmap to a permanent solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The roadmap specifies the steps for the two parties to take to reach a settlement and a timeline for doing so, under the auspices of the Quartet, the United States, the European Union, the United Nations, and Russia. So I would like to highlight a couple things for you, which includes the following is a performance-based and goal-driven roadmap with clear phases, timelines, target dates, and benchmarks, aiming at progress through the reciprocal steps by the two parties in the political, security, economic, humanitarian, and institution-building fields under the auspices of the Quartet. That is the United States, the European Union, United Nations, and Russia. The destination is a final and comprehensive settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by 2005. They didn't meet the date, as presented in President Bush's speech of the 24th of June. The two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will only be achieved through an end to violence and terrorism when the Palestinian people have leadership actively, decisively against terror and willing and able to build a practicing democracy based upon tolerance and liberty, and through Israel's readiness to do what is necessary for a democratic Palestinian state to be established, and a clear, unambiguous acceptance by both parties of the goal of a negotiated settlement as described below. A settlement negotiated between the parties will result in the emergence of an independent, democratic, and viable Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with Israel and its neighbors. The settlement will resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and end the occupation that began in 1967. You know what the end of the occupation is? A return to the 67 borders. Based upon the foundation of the Madrid Conference, the principle of land for peace, UN Security Council resolutions 242, 338, and 1397. So the roadmap affirms UN Resolution 242, 338, and 1397. 1397 was the resolution that mandates the creation of a Palestinian state. Therefore, the Israeli government has already agreed to a Palestinian state, already agreed to the 67 borders. They just have a dilemma in how they're going to uproot all the Jews who are living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem from their homes and politically be able to do it. That's the hard part. But they've already agreed to a Palestinian state based upon the 67 borders. Now, I would like to read to you an article written by Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was the Secretary of State under the Carter administration. And the reason why I'm reading this to you is because he states what he says has been the policy of the United States since 1967 regarding how the United States government, both Democrat and Republican, view the conflict in the Middle East. And what he is going to say, and what I'm going to show and read to you, is that it's been the position of the United States government that the solution in the Middle East would always be two states, Jerusalem being an international city, based upon the 1949 armistice lines or the pre-67 borders. Now, how long have you known that our government had that position? They haven't told you. Now, in the negotiations, that's been made clear, but they haven't told the public. You know why? Because if they make that known to the public, since 80% of Jews vote Democratic, and there was, during this period, Democratic presidents, then it would hurt the Democratic Party. So therefore, they made it known in the documents, in the signing of the documents, in negotiations, but they're going to keep it from the American people because they know that the American people aren't ready to accept it. So they're trying to get it implemented through what it looks like negotiations between the parties themselves, but what the parties are to agree to has been mandated to them, and the parties have already agreed to what the end result will be. So let's see what Brzezinski explains. The statement that President Bush delivered at the conclusion of his recent meeting with the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas deserves serious attention. It has been discussed by the Israeli press, but drew scant commentary in the U.S. media. The President, in his formal presentation, declared that any final status agreement between Palestinians and Israelis must be reached between the two parties, and changes to the 49 armistice lines must be mutually agreed to. He knows that the Arabs won't agree to that. So therefore, that's a way of saying that the agreement will be based upon the 49 lines. The United States government's position is all the settlers in Judea, Samaria must leave their homes. In Gaza, must leave their homes. In East Jerusalem, must leave their homes. Lest there be any misunderstanding, the President said that Israel should not undertake any activity that contravenes roadmap obligations or prejudices final status negotiations with regard to Gaza, the West Bank, and Jerusalem. A viable two-state solution. Viable means you can't have a little land here and then Jews living here and then more land here and Jews living here. Viable, continuous. No Jews. A viable two-state solution must ensure contiguity of the West Bank, and a state of scattered territories will not work. There must also be meaningful linkages between the West Bank and Gaza. This is the position of the United States today. It is the position of the United States at the time of final status negotiations.